Good morning, everybody, or nobody, depending on how things go. It is, the 5th of November, which is usually when people fail to blow up the parliament. Let's hope it stays that way. In that regard, yeah, the third in a row, so to speak, morning breakfast productivity sprints. And today I have to actually write because all the other productivity stuff that I did over the last 2 days, not 2 days, but like on Friday and Monday, are basically done, so I have no excuse to just sit around and do nothing. It means writing. Let's hope I can actually do that. I somehow doubt it, but it is what it is. Yeah, let's see if anyone is actually around and what else I need to do. But yeah. What can I say? The review that I wrote and that I had to go through editing yesterday is already out. So the first time I've written a longer piece of text in German in 2 or 3 years, and it's done. So that's good, I guess. Not that that would actually turn me into a journalist or anything, but it's nice to actually finish a small piece of text. So let's hope that this is a good omen for me finishing a longer piece. Well, not finishing a longer piece of text, but writing a longer piece of text today. Yo, Kale, how you doing? How's the passage going? I hope it is still going well. Yeah. I did, in fact, finish my reading of Wild Faith yesterday, which really good book, really depressing book. But then again, if the subtitle is How the Christian Right Takes Over America, it is both timely and scary. And then I returned to Mormon reading, and I have read the first part, I guess, like first 25% or so, or like the first quarter of like a fiery meteor, a biography of Joseph F. Smith, who is the nephew of Joseph Smith Jr., who was the son of Joseph Smith Sr. And Joseph Smith Jr. is the one that actually founded Mormonism. There's way too many Joseph Smiths in Mormonism. It feels it's a bit like reading 100 Years of Solitude, and you have everyone called Jose Arcadio, and this time everyone is called Joseph Smith. Hey, Jen, how you doing over there? Yeah, America. Who knows? I'm also running out of tea, which is a really bad thing. I need to go to a store today and buy new tea. Or I will have to start drinking beer for breakfast, and we don't want that. It's not a good idea, all things considered. So yeah, that's currently what I'm trying to do. So I'll probably just do the thing that Jin told me, Stephen King told him, which is yeah, just barf out the whole book. We'll see. I'll try writing. We'll see how it goes. I haven't done that in a long time, and it'll probably be bad, but better something than nothing. I mean, that's kind of the whole like universe thing, right? Yeah, but most books have sad characters. I feel it's one of those things that you can't really escape for whatever reason. I don't know why. But yeah. Holy shit, it's also like the audiobook is like 36 hours long. I just checked. That's a lot. Wow. Yeah, I just checked, like 36 hours. That's like insane. Kale, we have our next election, like, so we obviously have like both like federal elections and we have like state elections because Germany being, a federal republic, means that each state has like their own like regional government, and we have those spread out all over the place. We had a bunch of them earlier this year. The next ones for like the federal government will be next autumn, I think. And I'm not looking forward to that. It's going to be really, really bad, unfortunately. For the same reasons that, shit is bad in the US and shit is bad everywhere at the moment. It's, the usual thing. You have fucking Nazis out there, and then you have liberals who feel that it's better to give in to the Nazis because appeasement has always worked. And suddenly you have like no, like, in any way, socialist, leftist, whatever, like, opportunity. And that's really sad because we don't even, we have like a multiple party system. We don't even have the two-party system that the US has, but still, like, we have no really leftist party that I could vote for in with any conscience, because our leftist party is very good friends with Putin and Russia and has always been, and that it's not an option at the moment. And yeah, it's really frustrating. So you have all the Nazis, you have the Christian conservatives, which are probably roughly where Democrats stand in the US, and then you have technically the Social Democrats, which are just too nice to do anything, and the Green Party, it's sort of hated by everyone because, yeah, everyone else has been giving in to fucking Nazi propaganda for the last 10 years now. How the Greens are going to make us all be vegan and forbid us to drive our diesel Porsches on the autobahn. It's frustrating. So not looking forward to next year. Yeah, but I don't think he made them better afterwards, Jin. Or at least I really hope he didn't do that. Although I don't think there went much editing into like his early Salvatore novels. Like he wrote the first one in like 3 months or something, and there can't be that much editing in it. And yeah, you're right. Of course, it's easy, or the idea is to just like throw it out and edit it afterwards. I just also need to overcome my fear of editing, and because I don't only have that when editing audio or video, when I have to hear my voice, but even reading my voice sometimes is painful, and I obviously need to overcome that at some point. But yeah, putting stuff out is, I think, the best and most important part. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really good if you have that option, right, Jin? I mean, technically, our elections can obviously happen earlier if the current government breaks up, and there's obviously always people claiming that it has to or it will or whatever. Um, but if not, every 4 years in Germany, and every 4 years means next time it would be 2025 or 2026. I'm always confused about that because I keep forgetting when I voted the last time, but I think it was in 2021 and not in 22. But won't be fun either. And yeah, I mean, we'll see how wrecked everyone is if when I do these sprints tomorrow morning, and we'll see how far the election massacre has gone in the US by then. I suspect it won't be fun. Yeah, and that's like the thing. Like social democrats are sort of like Labour at this point, like the British Labour Party. They're not doing anything reasonable. It's just so frustrating when like you kind of know that there is a potential for somewhat more left leaning, somewhat populist topics in your voting population. These we know these groups exist. We know there is a market for it, but somehow they're all so captured by that neoliberal like ideology at this point that they can't bring themselves to actually tap that sort of like potential, and it's so frustrating. And that's yeah, that's it's just really painful and trust and yeah, frustrating. Yeah, it's next year. German federal elections will be next year. I see that's the interesting thing that I've learned over the last months or years. It's really interesting to read German news about U.S. politics and compare it to U.S. news about like U.S. mainstream news about U.S. politics, and then the more like sort of alternative stuff like online, whether it's streamers, political streamers on YouTube or Twitch or whatever, but also like journalists that write on Substack or other sort of alternative platforms and stuff like that. If you compare those three things, they give you like completely different pictures of like where U.S. politics are at the moment. And I'm like, out here in Germany, I have no idea how those elections go. But then, from the outside, it was weird to see someone like Trump even get to where he is at this point, like even being considered a a serious or viable candidate in the first place. Like, how can you? But then again, we also have our fucking Nazis that get way too many votes. So yeah, I don't know how that will go. I suspect it will go poorly no matter what. But at this point, like, there's nothing I can do, and I suspect there's nothing Kale can do, and yeah, it's more like it's a bit like an avalanche, right? We've all thrown our rocks down the hillside, now we're seeing where where the whole thing is rolling, and it and whom it will crush at the end, and that's not a not exactly a calming image, is it? It doesn't reassure me, I can tell you that. It's certainly something. All right, and with these very, very reassuring words, I would start the first sprint. And I'll talk to you guys in 45 minutes at around 9 my time, which is really late for some of you, but that's the plan. I'll try to write. I started this whole draft like last year, roughly around this time. So I guess I'll have to look over what I wrote back then. It was like 1,000 words or something like that. So I'll look at that and see what needs rewriting, where it is going, all of that stuff, and we'll see where I'll be, where I am in like 45 minutes. Hello again. I hope this worked. I am back at 9, and I did, in fact, well, did procrastinate some in a productive way. I did, in fact, well, open the document where I'm planning to write the book, and I did write the first sentence, so there's that. And then I did also write some, respond to some YouTube comments on yesterday's video, which, as I said, seems to be, feels like work, or it doesn't feel like work, but it kind of is work once you are, I guess, a content creator. And since I have to do that on my phone at the moment, it took longer than I wanted. And then I did something that I should have done like months ago, or at least weeks ago, which is add my address or confirm my address for a Kickstarter for a role-playing game that I backed like 5 years ago, and they're sending it out now, and I've been ignoring their emails forever. And since this is called Productivity, I figured filling out that form is a good idea, because then I can delete all those 10 reminder emails that I've already in my inbox, because I am a person with a email inbox that has currently 680 unread emails. So getting rid of some of them feels like productivity in its own right. But I did write the first sentence, and now I'm trying to find out whether I want to write this in what tense to use. If this is like, I mean, I guess I will do the third person limited kind of perspective kind of thing, because I don't want to try first person writing at the moment. And the question is like past or present, and I feel like present works better because it has like more immediacy. But yeah, that's something I'm playing around with at the moment. Hey, Apollo, good morning. Glad you can pop in. Yeah, university can be, or have you been there long, or is this like your first year at university? Also, what kind of university? Kat is doing the same thing. Also going to university later, I assume. Dare I ask what you study, Apollo? Only if you're comfortable sharing, of course. So yeah, so I did fill out most of that Backer Kit survey for the Shadows of Esteren Dark Part 2 campaign, I guess. Anyway, it's a weird sort of like slightly horror, slightly gothic fantasy tabletop role-playing game, and they've been around for a long time. And I started like with the first book, and then I've kind of just stuck with them every time they put out like a new product, and it's always really interesting, cool shit. It has this weird gothic vibe that is sort of like Gothic Scotland, Gothic England, but through like a weird anime lens for whatever reason. And they're a French company, so it's even weirder. But yeah, I kind of fucked that one up by not replying early enough, and now I hope I can still get my stuff. Because it turns out if you just like stop communicating with the world for like 2 years because of depression, it really leaves you with this pile of stuff that needs doing, and it's not always easy. So there's that. Also, hello, Kat. Glad you could make coffee. When do you have to run for uni today? Well, I've never been to Harvard, but then I've never been to the States. So that's something that still looms in my future, if there is a future, if there are states in, So I guess we'll figure that one out tomorrow or so, maybe. That's like one of those weird things that I've been thinking about recently. Like, as I said, like I'm working on the Mormonism video. I've written down stuff, and I'm like, should I wait with like starting to record until at least tomorrow so I can take the events of this election sort of at least slightly into account, or should I start recording now and then maybe re-record stuff later or change my tune later? And it's weird because on the one hand I really want to start recording, on the other hand I don't want to re-record stuff, so maybe I should wait until tomorrow. It's I don't know. It's a weird time that like suddenly, well, not suddenly, but like something like Mormonism is very much tied to US history in a lot of ways. So I have to sort of take that into account. Especially since the LDS Church did skew hard right in the 60s and 70s, very deliberately, which is something that you see the results of nowadays as well, when they did in the 60s and 70s ally themselves with Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority. Well, that was in the 70s, and with Phyllis Schlafly. When it's one of those like weird things that are so fucked up that Utah was about to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in the 70s with obviously all the Mormon support, because Mormonism has traditionally had a lot of, but they had the women's relief societies in different editions, and that like Mormon women did have a lot of like independence, power, whatever you want to call it, or at least agency within the larger church corpus for a long time. But in the 70s, Phyllis Schlafly convinced the then leader of the women's relief society of the LDS Church that Equal Rights Amendment is a bad thing, and then Utah basically reversed its decision to ratify the ERA, and that's one of those key moments where the LDS Church stepped further to the right than, to the right where they are now, basically. But it's one of the things that I found interesting throughout my research recently. That's like it wasn't always that way, and that's part of like where the video will go once it's basically recorded, is like to look at like what things happened to basically get the LDS Church to the place where it is now. I mean, don't get me wrong. The times when it was revolutionary, progressive, are very limited in the whole history, but the sort of alliance with the far and Christian right is a newer thing than you might think in a lot of ways, and it's basically to blame on like a handful of people that were in the right positions to basically figure that one out and organize that, orchestrate that move to the right. And it's basically, a Counsel J. Reuben Clark in the late 1930s, and his basically friend, heir, whatever you want to call him, Ezra Taft Benson in the 60s and 70s, while the then president of the church, David O. McKay, was obviously, because everyone is super old in that church, was very old and somewhat indecisive. So his basically second or third in command, because he was part of the Quorum of the 12, Ezra Taft Benson, could move the church to the right, while David O. McKay was basically not doing a lot. And that's part of what basically happened there. And Ezra Taft Benson being, a bit of a far right person in a lot of ways. Like he was a big fan and cooperator with the with Robert Welch and the John Birch Society, and he was asked to run as running mate and vice president candidate with George Wallace, which you may remember is the guy about segregation today, tomorrow, and forever. So yeah, and if that kind of guy basically can call the shots, because the actual president of the church is very, very old, sometimes sick, and not exactly very strong-willed at that point in his like late 80s, or whatever age it was at the time. Yeah, you don't have to be a prophet and revelator to guess where that is going, right? Well, I can understand that, Apollo, but Marburg University is a nice university. Don't get me wrong. I've spent way too many years there, and I've also kind of stepped out of it at some point because of the usual stuff. In this case, having massive writer's block and not being able to hand in any of the term papers, but that was during my additional bachelor in history in Marburg, and then I was too broke to pay the reenlistment fee, and that's why I'm currently not at university. I'd love to go back and actually finish the bachelor in history at Marburg, but maybe I'm too old for that shit now. And yes, you're right. The abortion thing is really late, and that's one of the things that I found really interesting. Well, not interesting. It's something I technically already knew, but something that Talia Levin does actually explore heavily with her new book Wild Faith. It's like how the abortion thing is basically used by the Christian right in that regard in the late 70s to whip up votes when the thing that they were actually sort of mostly concerned about was obviously segregation of schools, which in 78 was no longer something that you can get away with. So they basically decided to use a different sort of like point to rally around. And abortion is obviously something that is highly emotionally charged at the time. So you can use, or not only at the time, but it's something that you can charge with a lot of emotion. So you do that instead. But the goal is still, a white Christian theocracy at the end of the day. And the whiteness has never actually left, but it just shifted sort of uh, into the background because it was no longer publicly viable, which is interesting because 1978 is also when Spencer W. Kimball, I think it's W, but Spencer Kimball, the then president of the Mormon Church, finally received a revelation from God that black church members can actually receive priesthood endowments and can be priests, and priesthood in Mormonism works kind of different, like can actually go into the temple and everything, which they were banned from until 1978. Although in the very early days, there was no problem. Like under Joseph Smith in the beginning, it's totally fine. We have documented black church members being endowed with priesthood and everything. But then under Brigham Young, that was very clearly stated as no, that has never happened. And it's a sad part. There's a good book called Mormonism and White Supremacy that is exploring all of that in some detail. And yes, in 1978, it was finally removed. Before that, however, people threw Molotov cocktails at a BYU basketball game, like a college basketball game against some other university. Some teams boycotted playing BYU because of the exclusion, the priesthood ban against black people, and someone threw Molotov cocktails. So shit got real intense in the 70s there. So yeah, that's as you can tell, I've read way too much stuff on Mormonism recently, which yeah, I guess I don't know. I may have spent too much time working on this already. But only 2 books left and then I'm done. Hey, Britain, happy Guy Fawkes Day to you as well. Let's hope this remains the day where we celebrate people failing to destroy democracy. So yeah, but it was really interesting to do all that Mormon history research because it does sort of very interestingly. It's a very great it's a great example to look at like American history, U.S. history in the 19 for the last 200 roughly 200 years, I guess. It's a really interesting way of doing that because in a lot of ways, the larger Mormon sort of like project is a bit of a microcosm of larger U.S. concerns at the same time, and then kind of sometimes moves away from larger U.S. society and then moves back closer to it and then back out again in a lot of interesting ways. So there's a lot there, and I don't regret reading all of that stuff. But at some point, it has to sort of turn into actual, you know, an actual project of some sort, like a video or whatever. It's like, I mean, at this point, I guess I have read more pages than you generally have to read for, like, I don't know, I guess a bachelor's thesis in, say, religious studies or whatever. I'm pretty sure I've overstepped that at this point. I've read like 15 serious like academic books on the subject. I guess I would have to also, you know, if it were an academic paper, I would have to cite some, papers and stuff from journals and stuff, and not just like monographs. But it's been a lot of like heavy reading. Yeah, I mean, we can all hope, but I feel like with Trump, it's not so much Trump himself, but it's more like the people that are sort of like behind him at this point that are the danger. But we'll see how that goes. Are you still reading war stories, Britain, or have you finished the next one as well? Yeah, I mean, as for the election stuff, I know the Summer News people are doing like a live stream, election live stream later today. I might just tune into that one because they feel they're the kind of people that I trust to sort of do this justice in a way that won't make me incredibly depressed at the same time. So we'll see. Oh yeah, you said that you wanted to read the Yellow Birds. How's it so far? Yeah, I mean that's like the other thing. Like with polls, polls don't necessarily work as well as they did before. I don't know how it is in the U.S. with polling. Like in Germany, one of the things that's really interesting with polls in Germany is that for the longest time they did like phone polls, just like call up people, and for that they used landlines, which in itself already massively reduces the number of, or like the kind of group that you get to talk to, because how many people still have landlines and how many people answer landlines and how many people of those are then willing to actually answer questions for like any kind of pollster, right? That's a very, very, very specific kind of group of people, and they're probably all over 70 at this point, so their views are not exactly representative of like the larger population. So I don't know how polls in that regard, obviously for an election people go out and talk to people on the streets and shit like that. I get it, but it's interesting to see where polls come from and how polls work in that regard. Kat, I totally get it. News are incredibly depressing, and I don't think that will change anytime soon. It's yeah, it's very frustrating. But yeah, today are elections. You might want to stay under that rock until, I don't know, at least another 2 or 3 days until we kind of know where things are going. Yeah, like Belgian elections are like a whole other thing, though, right? I mean, um, Belgian politics is like the thing that I don't understand, and then I talk to people from Belgium, and they tell me they don't understand it either, and I'm like, okay, I guess, I guess it's fine. You have read Slaughterhouse-Five before, right, Britain? Um, I would recommend All Quiet on the Western Front. I don't know how long it is. Let me check. It's a very depressing one. That should not. Let me see if this is unabridged. Yeah, the unabridged audiobook is like 7 hours and something, which would translate into 250 to 300 pages, I guess, for the English version. And it is very depressing. It's World War One, and it's definitely a classic. Just don't expect it to be fun. So yeah, like either the very short Slaughterhouse-Five or the also relatively short All Quiet on the Western Front would be my recommendations, depending on whether you want a very realistic depiction of World War One or or Slaughterhouse-Five. I feel like Belgian politics are the closest we have ever come to an entire country basically practicing anarchy in a way that does kind of work, because there's so many governments, and sometimes they don't exist and sometimes they do exist, but the country still kind of keeps on going. So it's not the best argument for anarchy, for anarchism, but it's certainly it shows that you don't have to have a functioning government to have a functioning state. I mean, functioning to a certain degree of function, of course. Oh, wait. I guess we'll have to do a shorter second sprint. I just checked the time, and we're getting. If I want to end this at 10 and then go to the gym, this will be difficult. Or we'll do 45 minutes, and I'll go to the gym like half an hour later. That's the other option. You guys got preferences? I'm up for both. Okay, let's do it the other way around. We do 45 minutes of writing, sprinting, and so forth. That would be 10 past 10, and then I'll do a bit of chatting, and then I'll leave to hurt myself in the gym, and you guys prepare mentally for sleep or university, or sleep at university, depending on what kind of course you have to take today. So let's do it that way. It gives me some time to actually still write something. All right, talk to you guys at 10 past 10. All right. Well. I am back, and I did in fact write a few more words, which I think is, well, good. I haven't counted. Maybe it's 100, maybe it's 200 words, which is obviously not a lot for, 45 minutes, but I did also, write another YouTube comment, and had to make new tea and talk to my flatmate for a couple of minutes because he just came back from night shift. So there's that. But at least a beginning has been made, and I have written a few words. I don't want to. I'm not sure if I should actually do like word count stuff this early on. I feel like it might just be incredibly disheartening if I do that like all the time, get caught up in numbers when clearly that's not the goal here. But you never know. To be fair, Kat, like doing a civil war in Belgium sounds like a really bad idea, what with everyone else holding their wars there already. So I feel like having separate governments might just be the better way of doing this. But yeah. How did you guys do? Did you get something done? Did you read something? Or is at least the coffee good? Well, I have to probably pack my stuff and get down to the gym relatively soon so I can, hurt myself some more in the name of, I don't know, probably toxic masculinity. But I'll listen to more of Like a Fiery Meteor, which will be interesting. It's a good book so far. It's as I said, it's another biography of yet another president of the Mormon Church. But it's what I appreciate about this one is that it's relatively clear about methods in a way that the biographies I've read of both Joseph Smith and Brigham Young and David O. McKay were not necessarily. It's putting larger sort of contexts around it. It refers to other sources and so forth. It feels more. I don't know. Yeah, it makes connections that otherwise I would have to make on my own, which helps me. What with me being very lazy and everything, which is obviously a good thing. All right, good luck at university then, Apollo. I'm glad you could make it. Very much appreciate that. Yeah, Kale, but that means I will have to fly to Utah, and I doubt that's something I can afford anytime soon. We'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens once I put the video out. It's one of those things where I have no idea if it will do well or not. Looking at like the amount of work I put into like the video on anti-Semitism or the video on like Arthurian literature last year, and comparing it to the numbers that those videos did afterwards, I'm somewhat skeptical. But then again, Mormonism is obviously a bit of a hotter topic than Arthurian literature, so maybe there's a chance that it will actually get more views. Maybe it'll also help what with me talking about Sanderson. Maybe if someone else, not me because I don't have like a Reddit account, someone posts like my my videos on Sanderson in like a Sanderson subreddit, it may boost numbers and shit. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I mean, obviously numbers are always good, but then again, what with me probably being somewhat more critical of Sanderson's writing, it may end with me just having like lots of angry comments. But who knows? Who knows? I would definitely be open to talk to Sanderson as a person. I have no ill will against the human being Brandon Sanderson. not yet. But Sanderson would never talk to me. I mean, not at this point, because I'm just way too small a content creator. It's not worth him for him to talk to anyone like me at this point. And he's nothing if not business savvy, so I haven't started Elantris yet. I read the first era Mistborn trilogy, and I read the first book of the second trilogy years ago, and it was, very serviceable. And of course, I read the stuff that he did for the Wheel of Time books. But then again, Robert Jordan was not the master of multiple prose styles to begin with. So continuing that and not getting worse was not exactly that hard of a challenge, I assume. So hard to say. Who can say? But I will give it a fair shake, and I will be as just as I can be. Not because I mean, there's a lot of people who already bash Sanderson for his writing style or whatever, and like, yeah, I'm not going in publication order as well, Kale. But yeah, but my point was, a lot of people do bash Sanderson, and I feel a lot of that is like very cheap criticisms. You need to sort of build up your argument. If you go like, oh, but it's boring, that's the personal taste. And if you go, oh, the prose is bad, then you need to explain why you think the prose is bad or whatever. And that's something that I'll try to do. Although I want to focus more on like themes and how he deals with themes than just like prose style, because English is not my first language. I always feel bad when I judge authors for like prose style. I'm like, how the fuck would I know? I have no qualifications in that regard. So we'll see. But yeah, that's what I've heard, that his prose, like his vocabulary, is relatively limited or whatever, and that it's easy. It's very accessible, and that's a good thing in a lot of ways, because beyond everything else, right? Beyond anything else, if Sanderson gets people who would not read books otherwise into reading, if it's that entryway, if it's that entry point, then that's a good thing, because ideally, at least some of these people will then pick up other books and expand their horizons and their vocabulary and so forth, and become readers, which is a really, really good thing. Probably doesn't help. It probably doesn't necessarily work for me, because I guess I'm already, I've already read a couple of books at this point, so that's why I will not, not necessarily harp on the prose style too much, because yeah, it's a good way of coming across as incredibly arrogant as well, or elitist. I was like, oh no, I need complicated prose. I only read Stephen Erickson. It's like, no, simple prose can be incredibly effective and works well. The repeating information, I guess, is a different issue there. But then, I've read Wheel of Time, and that has like so much repeating information. So yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Like books like Malazan or other stuff in that area, or science fiction as well. There's authors that make you pay attention much more, and that definitely help becoming a better reader. I mean, one of my worst experiences in that regard was like years and years ago, starting to read Thomas Pynchon, and for whatever reason, I decided to start with Against the Day, and that was a steep learning curve, I can tell you that. So after that, Stephen Erickson was not too bad, because but I feel like there are these kind of books where, like, the first time you encounter something like that, it will hit you like a brick, and there's nothing you can do about that. There's nothing but to sort of like see if you can push through and then get used to it or not. And I would not know how to fix that problem, because there are just like different categories of writing in that regard. You can't slowly ease someone into that, I think. That's what I think. Anyways, it's 20 past 10. I'd better pack my stuff and go out to pretend that I know what I'm doing when it comes to sports and shit. And I'll see you tomorrow when we are all hungover from a wonderful election day, I guess. Thanks for hanging out. I really appreciated it. I really appreciate that, and we'll see how much writing I get done tomorrow. Maybe more than just 100 words or 200 words or whatever. But at least I did also do some general maintenance stuff. All right, then have a great day. Have a great night, depending on where you are, and see you around somewhere.